The number of the day is 2.9%. That's the headline from the CPI report today, meaning that prices went up 2.9% compared to this time last year. And it is the lowest inflation number we've seen in over 3 years since the pandemic. That's a big deal. And it's got President Biden with a little spring in his step.
Has the U.S. beat inflation, Mr. President?
Yes. I told you we're going to have a soft landing. We're going to have a soft landing. My policies are working. Start writing that way, okay?
All right. So it's been a while since we heard from him. There was the president. But is he right? Has the U.S. beat inflation? Here to help us sort all of this out, NC State economics professor Mike Walden. Mike, we appreciate you being with us here as always.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's start with that percentage, that 2.9% number. Should we be celebrating this, or is it a little too early to pop the champagne?
Well, I think it's too early to pop the champagne cork, but I want to make the point, and I think you were alluding to this, that we're never going to get to a situation consistently where prices are going down. In fact, that's a situation that we really don't want to get to, because normally when we have price deflation, we're in a bad place in the economy. We're in a recession or depression. What the Federal Reserve is trying to engineer is to get us back to a more moderate inflation rate, something they are targeting 2%. So the fact that we went from 3% last month year over year to 2.9, we're obviously headed to that magic 2%. But people are still behind in terms of the fact that their incomes have not kept up with higher prices. About a year ago, they were behind by somewhere around 7 or 8%. This right now, we're about 4% down. So we're making improvements. So there's improvement all around. But the point I want to stress is that people should not expect to see all prices going down. Some prices do, but not all prices are going to go down. That's an unusual and actually a bad situation.
Let's talk on that for just a moment. It is important to note, and I'm going to put up a couple of details here. The prices, as you know, Mike is saying, will not come down. Inflation ticks up every single year. Since 2020, it is up 21%. If you go back to 2014, it's up 31%. We can look back even further. There's a graph here that we want to show you. It shows the monthly CPI reports dating back to 2004, and you'll notice the line is almost never below zero. The prices are always going up. The only time we saw a little bit of a dip into the negative was in early 2009, and we all know what happened then, a terrible recession. So, Mike, again, you were saying that we don't want prices to go down again, that would mean something bad. So is the only remedy here, the only antidote, higher wages, people making more money to catch up?
That's right. And if we do get to a 2% inflation rate, that historically is low enough for most people to see wage gains and income gains that keep up with that. That's what the goal is of the Federal Reserve, and I think that's what the goal is of all economists who follow this. Interestingly, you showed on that excellent graph that notice that when the prices were going down, there was a shaded gray area. The shaded gray areas in that graph means recession. So we don't want to have that. And I know this is hard for people to understand, but the reason prices aren't going to go down is right now everything is up. Wages especially are up, even though they haven't kept pace with inflation. So you're not going to expect businesses to go back to 2019 prices because people are not going to accept 2019 wages. So again, the goal here is to get the inflation rate, the gain in prices every month, low enough such that the average person can keep up in terms of higher earnings.
One of the things that people are looking at is this CPI report could push the Fed to lower interest rates next month. That could be good for people looking to buy a house. It could be good for the stock market. But what does it mean for inflation? I do want to play a quick clip. This is what a Wake Tech business instructor told us recently.
It's beneficial if you're a borrower and if you want to thinking of refinancing your home. If there's a rate cut, then you'll get better rates, and that will benefit you. Or if you need to get a new car and you need to borrow money for that, you'll probably get a better rate in the future if they cut rates. Where it hurts is whenever they cut rates, that means they printed money, and if they print money, that means that in the long run you will see more inflation.
I know these things can get very, very complicated. They're not always that simple, but can you give us an idea of what he's talking about there? And could rate cuts mean that we'll just see more price hikes down the line and we'll constantly be chasing that carrot?
Well, first part, when my colleague at Wake Tech said he's worried about the Fed printing money. Actually, the Fed has been taking money out of the economy over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. Normally, they are printing some money. It's always the question of how much. You don't want them to overdo printing of money because that actually is tied to higher prices and higher inflation. I think if we do get a rate cut, as my colleague said, that's going to help borrowers, but it's also going to help businesses borrow. And when businesses borrow and expand, that means more jobs, maybe higher paying jobs, et cetera. So I think the Federal Reserve is on track. And in fact, Chairman Powell has said this. They do want to cut rates. They're just waiting for the right point. They want to make sure that the inflation rate is still trending downward. But I think we are going to see a rate cut in September when they next meet. I think the question is only going to be between a 0.25% cut or 0.5% cut. And if that's successful and the inflation rate continues to trend down, I think we're probably going to see several cuts into 2025.
All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your insight, as we always do. You always make time for us. Thank you.
Thanks.